men and women who are incarcerated at a disadvantage, who are still learning themselves, they need hope, but they need to know what comes behind that hope. Because if I just come and tell you you can make it, I gave you hope. But then when you get out here and you run into certain obstacles that you weren't prepared for, because possibly you didn't have the time to do the work on yourself that you needed to, then that hope dies.
While we're here in Charlotte, North Carolina, preparing for our national panel discussion, we thought it was important that we stop by one of our good friends' homes to get an understanding from him on what reform looks like. How's it going? My name is Thomas Lucas, and welcome to another episode of the Equal Justice Now podcast. This actually is our very first episode of 2023, and like always, we have a very special guest with us. If you don't mind telling the people your name.
My name is Josh Proby, here currently in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Absolutely. Joshua, if you don't mind, man, you know, I know we met about a week ago.
Yeah.
And I was able to become privy to everything that you have going on, and it inspired this conversation to take place. But let's start from scratch, man. You know, where you from? Where'd you get started, and how'd you end up here?
Man, so, you know, going all the way back, born and raised in Albuquerque, born in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I get so many jokes about that. It's wild. But born in Albuquerque, New Mexico. From there, went to Colorado, stayed there for a long time with my grandmother, as well as where my grandfather is at. He's passed away now, but my grandfather was there. From there, I went to Minnesota. From Minnesota, I went and played around in Chicago a little bit, and then came down south, came to Atlanta, where I like to call home, learned so much there. And then from Atlanta, I found myself in Charlotte, North Carolina.
What was your childhood like?
Childhood was very challenging. Let me say that. Childhood was very challenging. Of course, we come up in an area and we come up in a time where mental health, where we come up in a time at that time where all of those things were obsolete. They weren't spoken of. We lived more of what goes on in the home stays in the home. So grandmother raised me, one of the strongest women that I know, but also dealt with some of her own struggles and triumphs. In relationships, abusive relationships, witnessed her go through that, witnessed my grandmother being shot, and also that was the time that I was molested. So that was youth and childhood was real. I was actually staying in Fayetteville, North Carolina at the time of this happening. So it was...
What age were you?
I believe I was 10 years old. I was about 10 years old when I was molested. I was going to a tough time. My mother, she was battling her own struggles and demons at that time. And I lived with my grandmother, born and raised in the church. But sometimes you just look back and be like, you know, why would God allow something like this to happen to me? So it was at that time when I began to not necessarily lash out, but become very reserved. Because as a youth, you know, how do you process some of those things that are going on in your life?
Right.
You know, how do you begin to channel those things? So I didn't channel them, I internalized them.
Yeah, that's, you know, I'm sorry to hear that. Take us through your teens.
Teenage years was wild, man. Your teenage years was wild. I finally mustered up the strength to tell my grandmother that I wanted to move with my mother at the time, who was living in Cincinnati. They were in Ohio at the time. And I told my grandmother that I wanted to move because I had always yearned to be with my mom. Even though my mom had her own struggles, own issues in life, I still just wanted to be with my mom. So teenage years went with her. We was in Ohio for a little bit. From there, we went to Hastings, Minnesota. And then from Hastings, we went to St. Paul. And then from St. Paul, I started to be in the NCRAD, Minneapolis, things like that. when it came to Minnesota. And that's when I first started beginning to lash out emotionally, mentally, trying to process what happened to me as a youth. It became just pent up aggression. And that pent up aggression just started lashing out at that time.
So you you go through this traumatizing situations, and you know, what was your breaking point? What does your breaking point look like where you realize, like, okay, like, you know, I've crossed that line, and I'm mentally in a place where, you know, no one can really say anything or help me, and I'm here. And you know, what was your first, I mean, you've done some time, you know, what was your first offense? What was that moment like?
First offense was for stealing cars. I was stealing cars, and then after that, it was, shoplifting. Then after that, it was stealing. Then after that, it was just a whole bunch of different small things um, that ended up leading up to bigger things.
How many times were you arrested?
Oh man, arrested for, I would say, about 50 times.
50.
Yeah, about 50.
So you've got about 50 mugshots.
Yeah, I got about 50. I got about 20 just downtown Charlotte. I got about 20 just downtown Charlotte, yeah.
When you what was your biggest offense, and what was the biggest amount of time, or lengthiest amount of time you spent behind bars?
That was me going to prison. Armed robbery and burglary were my biggest charges, uh, which I pled guilty to the armed robbery, which I was guilty of. That was probably my biggest offense.
So when you even in that moment of being frustrated, you still found accountability with yourself.
Yeah. I think accountability was still difficult because I was still learning how to process emotionally. Sometimes when we coming up, man, and different things happen in our lives, we're so quick to jump to the next thing to hide from what we really need to face in order to become better. So at the end of the day, I think accountability wasn't all like automatically there. It took some time for accountability to come in and for me to understand what even accountability was, because I was still siphoning through certain emotional stages that I still hadn't healed from. So it's like when you haven't healed from a certain situation, a certain thing, we're led to believe we hide in so many different things, and we become chameleons to the point where accountability for a situation, it's not really understood the characteristics or things needed to take it. So I think accountability was something that was more delayed because I had to figure out, exactly where I was at as a person, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, due to some of the traumas that I encountered.
Absolutely. So you served about like 10 years?
12.
12.
Yeah.
You know, when the judge gave you those 12 years, right? Like,
Right.
and you're sitting in that courtroom, what's going through your mind?
Man, first off, they don't even tell you in they don't tell you in years, they tell you in months. So it's like the time that you get, you don't really process the time you get till you get in the back. So it's like I got
And you breaking the mental calculator out.
I'm like, come on, man, like you just gave me 12 years, like, so it's not really until you get actually to your dorm or to your room that you actually, it's hitting you like I'm getting ready to do 12 years. So it begins to make you start making a normal out of something that's not normal.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm 22 years old and I'm having to count to see how much more time I'm gonna have left at life, because I'm like, okay, I get out when I'm 34. Okay, that's not too bad. So I'm rationalizing with things that aren't rational.
Right.
So it's like it becomes a situation and it becomes a time when your life flashes literally before your eyes. And that's what I was. I was 22-year-old young boy, broken boy, that had been molested when he was younger, trying to figure out life, dealing with the hardships and different things of my mother, and never knowing my father, and the typical story, so called, of a black African American male growing up in the society in the world today, and trying to figure that out without true guidance, without true support, without any of that. So in that same progression, I'm having to learn this the hard way. So what people rap about, and what people make, you know, entertainment
Right.
to the world, it actually was a true experience for me, and that experience shaped and crafted my life.
I got a question for you based on what you just said. You know, rap is pretty big in my life. I'm
Right,
from
right.
New York City. We
Okay,
were talking
okay.
about that not
Right,
too
right,
long
right,
ago.
right.
And what's your thoughts on you know the lifestyle that you lived and lived through, and those traumas being used in lyrics for entertainment?
I'm gonna say that, first and foremost, I'm not a rapper, so I can't speak directly to the pain or the different things that come out of music, but I am definitely in close relation to some very good people that are in the industry. And the music and how they express themselves is a form of expression.
That's right.
Does it mean that it gives them the license to say certain things that could potentially influence the generation behind, because mental health is lacking, because understanding is gone, because so many different situations are arising? Does that mean that gives them the license to say anything? Nah. But it does just have to understand that it's music, and it's the way that they're expressing themselves, and how people choose to handle it becomes the responsibility of the one executing what they're processing.
I couldn't have said it any better.
Yeah.
I agree. So the judge hands you 12 years. You're on your way to the back, and you're getting the mental calculator out, and you're adding up all these months.
Right.
What did your first week look like?
Man, first week, it's trying to figure out how I'm finna do this time. That's really what the first week consists of. It's understanding that you getting ready to go, and it ain't no more games being played. You gonna understand who sheep, you gonna understand who wolves. You gonna understand that when you get thrown in here, are you a fish or are you a shark? Because that's the type of environment that you're going in. And it's just really trying my best to get prepared for an environment that I had no clue what it was going to be like when I entered. So first week, a lot of nerves, wouldn't necessarily say fear, a lot of anxiousness. So it was just a lot of different emotions that first week, knowing that I'm getting ready to go do this, and the only way that it's gonna get done is a day at a time. So it was kind of just trying to prepare my mind for that.
Halfway through,
Uh-huh.
where were you mentally?
Halfway through, I did I did 2 years in solitary confinement. So when I was in solitary confinement, that part changed my life.
You ended up in solitary confinement. How'd you end up there?
Solitary confinement, got caught with a cell phone. Cause once you hit the yard, it's like it's life. It's like you got to figure out how you getting ready to get through here. And I believe that me jumping straight in, trying to get accustomed to the environment in which that I was in, I think it saved me. It saved me tremendously, because I didn't know what I was getting into. I didn't know how much a phone could put you in so many different type of situations. So the moment that I got it, I ended up getting caught with the phone that I got instantly, which sent me to lockup. And then when I went to lockup, it ended up hurting me, to the point to where I started to experience different things being in a room for 23 hours a day. So, you're already dealing with emotional and mental things that you have yet to face. And then now here you are, you get to a place, you get in trouble, you get put inside the jail, another jail inside the jail, and you're still having to deal with all of these things, not seeing anybody, not having nobody to talk to, no visitations, no letters, no phone calls, no TV, no nothing
For 2 years.
for 2 years. So it's like you begin to, in a certain sense, become barbaric in your thought processes. So in that time, I ran across the Bible verse, Psalms 46:10. I'll never forget. It said, "Be still and know that I am God." And it was in that moment that my life and the way that I handled my current situation began to change. Started writing, started journaling. Didn't know that they would end up eventually being books, but just started expressing myself on paper. It was my first time really understanding and being able to express myself. So solitary confinement, in a way, it hurt me, but in so many different ways, it saved me too.
Would you say that? Would you say that it broke you down to start the process of yourself building yourself up?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that that was the last straw to my pride. You
Mm.
know,
Mm.
getting fed through a strap. Having to save, food from off the trays to be able to make sure that you go to sleep at night with some on your stomach. Just different things like that. It broke me. It broke me.
So you only got fed once a day,
No, we got fed 3 times a day.
3 times a
Got
day.
got fed 3 times a day.
What were those meals like?
Oh man, horrible, like horrible. I went to vegan. I haven't ate meat in probably like 18, 19 years. But it was due to prison. Like if you see the meat in there, you ain't gonna eat meat no more either.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like that's
I'm
just
on my
how it
way.
is.
I'm pescatarian. I'm
Yeah,
on my
yeah.
way
That's
there
where I am
slowly but
now.
surely. Okay.
Yeah, that's where I'm in now. So it's like those times are very inhumane. So you're getting third, fourth, fifth, sixth tier meat, which is pretty much the gristle, anything that's left over that makes whatever patties that you eat. So after a while, that stuff is, cancerous things already live in your body. But then as you're putting more and more of that in there, the
You're just
chances
feeding
of
it.
you having a lot of time and getting out healthy eating under those conditions can be pretty severe. So I went vegan on lockup, which was even tougher. Uh, but also lockup began to create a certain type of discipline for me. I never had structure in my life. So although the structure of the system in that particular state is very inhumane, it gave me a deeper sense of what structure looks like, of what obedience looks like, of what, of course it's a controlled environment, but you still have to be willing to accept a different type of discipline for yourself
Right.
in the progression of that. So in my darkest times is when my life began to change.
Yeah, I'm just visualizing everything you just painted, and it's like, I've never done time, and so I can't imagine, what I would have done and what my breaking point would have looked like. But definitely commend you from, for building to where you're currently at. Let's get into a little bit of that. I think we've scared the young guys enough,
Yeah.
and so 12 years, and let's say you're coming up on your last year. What did that look like for you, and where was your mental at, and were you looking at, you're about to go back into society and you're not sure how it's going to look, or did you have an idea, or where were you at?
Man, my last year just ready, ready. It's kind of like any person who is built for whatever sport they're in, whether it's football, whether it's basketball, whether it's baseball, whether it's tennis. It's like preparing yourself for that big match, that big game. That's what it was like for me. Um, I was so ready. The word tells me to be anxious for nothing, but everything in prayer and supplication. So it wasn't necessarily an anxiousness. It was a definitive appointed time for me to fulfill and begin the progression for my purpose. That's what it was for me. My last year, I was locked in. I had already wrote my vision down, made it plain. I had already done the things that I knew I wanted to do. So it was like once I released and was released from them gates, and then it was on.
So talk to us about that execution. What did you execute on? What was your vision?
Coming home was a challenge initially. We gonna use lowercase challenge in that, not a bigger challenge, but the challenge of adjusting to society after being gone for so long, adjusting to the mentality and ideology of I can go take what I want, adjusting to the living conditions because I was in the Salvation Army when I first was released. Not having the reliable means of transportation during that time. Riding a moped, riding a bike back and forth to work, having to deal with the mental battle of not going back.
What was your first job?
First job was welding. I'm a certified welder. When I was incarcerated, I went to school for welding because I knew I didn't want to come home and be a janitor. I knew, no knock to what people choose to do, but I wasn't going to set myself up to believe that I would come home and and accept the fact that I'm just supposed to get out and live life on a regular standard or a regular level without striving for greatness in my purpose.
That's right.
So I knew that I had to get something that I could still make at least what I was half of what I was used to making illegally, you know. So I had to be realistic with it. And welding, instructor by the name of Daryl Harper, so grateful for him. He is a Caucasian man, and it was kind of different learning from somebody who was opposite of me. But he told me one time, he was like, "Yo, if you want to be successful, you got to get that chip off your shoulder." And initially, I was apprehensive to hearing something from somebody that didn't come from my walk of life.
Right.
But his assessment of me didn't have anything to do with my color. It had everything to do with him teaching and him understanding what it was going to take to exceed in what I was trying to pursue. And sometimes we can get so caught in our emotions, or we get so lost in some of the mental traumas that we have, we project onto other people things that didn't have nothing to do with them to begin with. And their advice is actually accurate towards the behavior that you're displaying. So at the end of the day, he taught me that. And I was like, "What trip you shoulder you talk about?" He said, like, the world owes you something, or you're ready to pay everybody back. And from a man that never knew me in that, it was that moment that I fought against it. And after I stopped fighting against it, I graduated at the top of my class. And even right now, he's a good mentor to me right now. So welding was my first job.
That's crazy. I definitely you're speaking on ego and letting it go. Would you say that is the epitome of becoming a man? Would you say that is it's what plays the biggest part in meeting success in this world and being who we're supposed to be?
I think so. I think the eradication of ego is big, or the submission to something greater than ego that keeps ego deeper and not allowing it to rise so high to the surface to where it becomes the controller of your life.
Right.
I think that's a big thing. You got to have a gauge on where your ego meter is at. As men, we all have them, but I think it is making sure that you keep those things underneath a certain subjection, that they don't have the power to rule in certain instances that could potentially be detrimental to your future.
For sure, for sure. I want to take it somewhere real quick with you. You obviously have done time. You obviously have a record in society. What is it like moving around today and doing positivity, which we'll get into in a moment? And do you feel like you can't make a mistake, you can't do wrong, or everything's gonna come crumbling down?
At times I do. In a lot of cases I do. I do feel like, because the magnifying glass is on me, because of the different things that I've been blessed to be able to accomplish so early. I do feel like there is a certain magnifying glass on me, and that if I trip the wrong way, then they're ready to bring up everything from the past. But at the same time, um, I also know that a mistake is what allowed me to be where I am right now. It started with mistakes. So I do
Absolutely.
know that there is room for them. But I do know also that the more success that I have, the more magnifying glasses are going to be out to try to vet and see the authenticity of my growth.
Do you think that that's right?
I don't think that it's necessarily right. I definitely can understand to a certain degree why it's there, but I don't think that the stigma of a person's past mistakes should continuously be the glass floor that he or she walks on, just hoping and waiting for it to break. I think that it's subjected to a certain position, and it deems to have somebody to have more power over them than actually what they really have. So uh, I think it's all in how we perceive it. Is it right? No. But does it have to determine how I move? Nah.
Absolutely. We live in a society and culture right now where, we have a cancel culture and, you know, um, hater Will Smith, who just, slapped the hell out of Chris Rock, and everyone wanted to just do away with them. And, it was clearly something he did in a moment of emotion and, feeling lack of respect as a man, and his wife was with him, and, as an organization, we feel as though people should be given second chances, third chances even,
Right.
and so we definitely agree as an organization with what you just said in regards to that glass floor. And then to add on top of that, being a minority and African American male, and already just, I mean, I know when I walk outside, I'm on cracked glass already,
Right.
and I don't even have a record,
Right.
and so I can only imagine how that must feel. And so we have these conversations, and we do discussion panels, and we do all of this messaging content to push forward, change in these realms as well, and change thought process for the mass, or look to change thought process for the masses in that way. I'm all tied up at the moment. This is a dope conversation here. Forgive me, I'm not Brian Gumble yet, but yeah, man. So you get out and you're welding, and you're at least pulling in a quarter or a half of what you were making illegally, and you didn't stop there.
Right.
Take us further.
So during that time, I opened up my business for my trucking business, which was one of the things that I wrote down while I was incarcerated, to be able to have a trucking business. So that was the very first business that I opened up. That was the very first business. After that,
Did you get any help doing that?
nah. I actually paid somebody $1,500 for my website, everything that pertained to the business. They set it up for me, everything. In hindsight, 2020, I would have, told him to teach me as I pay him, but one of the requirements of me paying him would have been to teach me how to do it myself.
So he set up your LLC.
Yep.
He helped you get a logo.
Yep.
He pretty much took you through all the steps by way of you paying him the $1,500.
Yeah, he pretty much took me through in the entire steps for what made up a properly structured business. And like I said, in hindsight, 2020, I would have probably told him to teach me, because I made so many mistakes after the fact, just not knowing.
And you remember what year it was that you started the trucking company?
It was October 18th, 2018.
Okay.
2018.
Wow. And so you started your trucking company. Were you driving yourself or?
Yeah. I didn't have my CDLs because I started with the box trucks. So
Okay.
once I started with the box trucks, I stayed in that for a while, up until just recently, where got a dually, got an 18 wheeler. Got multiple things. 2, 3 box trucks. So yeah, I started with the box trucks. That was my lane, and then I graduated. Finally got the courage, if you must say, to get into the bigger parts of it, which is the flatbeds, 18 wheelers, drive vans, refrigerator trailers, things of that nature.
Yeah, that's dope, man. I aspire to get into that business as well. I don't believe it's going anywhere
Nah.
anytime soon,
Right.
and it's opening up a lot of opportunity for, convicted felons and just people in general who want to fend for themselves and
Absolutely.
want to maybe feel as though they're stepping outside of the matrix a little bit per se.
Right.
And so definitely commend you for taking those steps. It's not definitely not easy getting from the box truck to the big leagues, and so
Nah.
congratulations on that.
Yeah,
And you
appreciate
did
it.
that in what, 4 or 5 years?
Well, I came home in 2018.
Right.
My trucking company started in 2018. I became active with my truck in 2019.
Okay.
So I had 3 trucks, 3 years out, about 3 years out, on top of all of the other things that I had been doing in the progression of that as well. Such as my clothing line and my book. Did my Amazon book. At first, it started gaining traction. I was on the ambassador of the Oprah Winfrey Show after that.
Hold on, hold on, hold on. Come on now, come on now. Because you telling us your story, and
Yeah.
you telling us about how you got out, and you were welding, and as I feel like I'm getting the modesty going here from you, and but then you dropping Oprah and you're dropping your book,
Yeah.
and so
Well-
let's have Equal Justice Now. We're big on giving people their flowers
Right.
while they're still here.
Absolutely.
And we do a big award show every year, the Attorney Benjamin Crump Equal Justice Now Award Show. We had 1,000 people out in LA last
dope.
year.
That was dope.
There, and so in this moment, I want to do a little award show for you, man. And so it's like, let's go down the list of all your accomplishments and accolades, and yeah, talk your book, talk everything.
Well, wasn't quite Oprah. I wish it was Oprah, but and Oprah has ambassadors who cover, the OWN network. Nikki Rich, thank you for the love. But going out to LA and experiencing that, having my book out on Amazon first.
Nikki Rich in LA?
Yes.
Oh, we love Nikki Rich. I believe she's going through some health things right now. We
Super strong.
we're definitely
love
praying
to Nikki
for you.
Rich. Love to Nikki Rich.
For sure.
Definitely love. And healing. Love and healing.
Absolutely.
But out there for that, and then after that, got my book out on Amazon. Couldn't tell me nothing. I was a self-published author. I was like, yeah, I done made it.
What was the focus of your book?
It's called The 30-Day Journey from Prison to Spiritual Peace.
Okay.
That was part 1, and then I had part 2. While I was incarcerated, I wrote 17 self-help books.
Whoa.
So all by hand, all of those, handwritten. And in the progression of that, I was an Amazon bookseller because while I was in Catawba Valley Community College, I was going there for TIG welding because I wanted to get that. I was certified in stick and MIG. So when I got out, I was at the Salvation Army driving my moped back and forth to Catawba Valley Community College. So while I was there, I went and talked to the Mr. Ron. I went to talk to Mr. Ron and Mr. Hunt. And after I went to go talk to them, they was like, we're going to put you in contact with our publishing department. Because I was actually trying to speak. And they put me in contact with them. Once I got in contact with them, we was like, we want to do your book. And I was just like, all right. So I went and got back the paperwork. Gave it to them. They began the editing progression of it, put it out on Amazon. It did pretty good. I started doing other stuff. I had my trucking company, started up my clothing line, and then after that, started speaking. Everything started gaining traction, and then after that, I got a 2-book deal from Christian Faith Publishing
Man,
for 2 books, and I just came back from Denmark from doing a book signing, and so now I'm an international speaker and author.
wow. That's dope.
Yeah, man.
That's dope. If you if you would have told your 14-year-old self this is
Yeah.
where you'd be at today, you'd
Yeah.
think he'd believe you.
Nah, not at 14. 14 probably be like, man, you tripping. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Always a big thinker, but when you're renewed in your mind and God begins to transform your life into certain ways, there's things that are gonna happen that are outside of your scope of even comprehension. So even as I accomplish these things, there's just so much that's outside of my comprehension. So much to be like, because I'm far from a perfect. I have different mistakes, going through hardships, going through divorce, going through so many just different things in life, in the progression of all of this, that many times, not even wanting to get up, not even wanting to deal with, some of my own mistakes. In the progression of just learning life. So many times people get caught up in the successes. Oh, you did this, you did that, you did this. But, what about the times that I'm having to rebuild my relationship with my kids? And they're like, Dad, you wasn't there. What about the times when, I got my son and my son is telling me like, yo, Dad, I love you, but, I wish you was here. Or rebuilding relationships with sisters, or rebuilding relationships with my kids and my family, and the strain of that, them not knowing that I was molested, and then me saying something. So in the midst of the pain, there is success, but there's a lot of pain that you deal with in the progression of that. And that pain is either going to shape you to be better. And what it did for me, it just reminded me of some of the hardships and the nights that I would ask God, like, why am I going through this? Why am I dealing with this? Why am I, in this room, no light? Why am I dealing with this? I ain't heard from my family in at least a year. What's going on? Why? Why is this happening? And sometimes what you're going through in the current moment has absolutely nothing to do with the current moment. It has everything to do with what he's already preparing you for, and the strength you're going to need when you get to a certain point in your life. So, in my failures and arriving at them later, in the midst of my successes, I had things to reflect back on that kept me strong.
Man, that's crazy. So how many kids do you have?
Kids, I have 3, and then I have 2 more that will always be considered mine. There's still love there. Ain't nothing gonna change that. Um, so yeah, I have 3.
So even with this 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 consistent struggle, pain, and just will to want to move forward, you still find yourself in a realm of accountability,
Right.
in a realm of wanting to take care of your family, wanting to be there for your family, even on the bad days that you might have as an individual, and we all have them, and so my question to you is, on those bad days when you wake up and you're like, man, I don't want to do this, what helps you get through? Is it faith, or what helps you get through that day?
Definitely faith.
Okay.
Definitely faith. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And at the same time, faith without works is dead. So in those moments that you don't feel like getting up, I have so many different reference points that help me get up. Because when I ain't feel like getting up, when I was in prison and I was sleeping on a concrete and a thin piece of thing called a mattress, I got up every day. So there's no way that God is going to bless me with what he's blessing me with, and I face opposition and I'm not going to get up and face it.
Right.
I think that God prepared me in the most darkest times of my life to face what it is. When God gives you a purpose, he gives you a purpose not with you failing every time you meet opposition. He gives you a purpose because he knows you're hardwired to be able to go through the opposition and still stand. So, with my call, with the purpose that's been placed on my life to help transform people's lives, he had to shape me in a certain place in order for me to first relate to the individuals in which that I'm gonna be speaking to and talking to, and even more importantly, so that I could be able to withstand all of the hits, the bruises, and even in my own learning curves. I went to prison when I was 22, and then I come home and then I'm married. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like automatically you're prescribed the responsibility of something you've never known the responsibility of what that looks like.
Crazy.
So you're learning it as you go, and you're gonna make a lot of mistakes in that. There's a lot of immaturity. There's a lot of fear. There's a whole lot of everything. Because the moment that we step into things as black males, we're supposed to already assume to know that role. And sometimes we take roles scared. We take roles fearfully.
Right.
Roles to be a father, roles to be a friend, roles to be a husband. Those things are fearful. We get married to the ideology. We get married to the feeling, the emotion, what comes from it, what we think to be. But then what happens when somebody does something to you and rubs you the wrong way in an area that you don't know you're still immature in? You've yet to develop emotionally. You've yet to develop mentally because so many accolades are being put before the healing of you as a man.
Right.
And those things aren't taken into account. So you have to take them in stride and you got to keep going. So I think that by me being able to uh, embrace some of the hardships I faced early, figuring out my mom had cancer when I still had 9 years left, and the battle of not going back, like, yo, I'm finna lose my mom, and still knowing how to stay strong in the midst of that. Just so many different things that God is like, yo, you remember when you picked up that phone and you found out? You remember that? I gave you the strength then, didn't I? I bet. Well, you got to get up for this. So it's like, and then when you have those compare and contrast based on where I'm living now, based on what God has blessed me with now, just me waking up and being able to look at my bed is enough for me to get up, So sometimes I don't want to, but then God reminds me like, yo, I done brought you too far, get up.
Word. That's a lot. That's and what you just kicked out like that is there's so many men out there that can't even unpack that for themselves in their own head. And so it's a testament to everything you've been through and had to you've definitely spent time in the mirror, and so I definitely commend you for that, because there's a lot of people out here that's been through what you've been through, and they're not in the space you're in right now. And with that in mind, you know you got out, you jumped into business. You weren't defeated. Got a trucking company, you got a book deal, well then, at any point did you say to yourself, well, I did my 12 years, I was in there, that was my life for 12 years, now I'm here, I want to help those guys who's behind me, or who's going through that? Did you reach a point where you felt like that, and if so, what did that look like?
Oh, absolutely. The day I left out the gates. The day I left out the gates, I knew I was coming back. And I wasn't just coming back for no yoga fellow or prayer meeting or nothing like that. I was coming back, A plan was already developed during my incarceration. So, I took every class, Thinking for a Change, Father Accountability, entrepreneurship, you name it. Whatever systematic program that was put in place, I took it. But in the progression of me taking those classes, I also was taking notes of what wasn't being provided. Because I had men that I went back and slept on the bunks with who was like, yo, bro, they don't got this, and they don't got this, and they don't got this. And those teachers of those classes, the leaders of those prisons and things of that nature, they weren't going back sleeping on the bunks next to me, actually hearing the hearts of every man that's in there. But I did.
So okay. So I just want to make sure the people are understanding what you're saying. You did 12 years. You got out, found success,
Right.
and then turned back around
Right.
to go sleep in some of the bunks with the guys in there to reconnect and start the process of helping them build. Is that what you're saying?
Not necessarily going back in there and sleeping in the bunks with them,
Right.
but returning back with them,
Right.
to show them the way out, to show them how it's supposed to be, right? So I could get out, right, of prison, and I can easily add to the systematic videos and things of that nature that say, hey, he got out and he came back and he went and told the guys that they can make it when they get out.
Right.
You know, to me, that's a smokescreen, because men and women who are incarcerated at a disadvantage, who are still learning themselves, they need hope, but they need to know what comes behind that hope. Because if I just come and tell you you can make it, I gave you hope, but then when you get out here and you run into certain obstacles that you weren't prepared for, because possibly you didn't have the time to do the work on yourself that you needed to, then that hope dies
That's right.
instantly.
That's right.
Right? So they remember when I said you can do it, but they was like, well, he didn't tell me this, and he didn't let me know that I can encounter this. Of course, it's not my responsibility how they respond to life's challenges, but it is my responsibility, because I've experienced what you experienced, for me to accurately bring back what needs to be brought back.
And I also think it's our responsibility too, like, not to get off the highway we on right now, but I got a young guy in my life right now who I try to help steer in the right direction, and he sent me a text yesterday, and he's like, hey, do you think Walmart is something good to invest in? And so I called them, and and he's looking into this because a couple weeks back I told him about the idea of investing. He's a young guy, 16,
Okay.
And I told him about investing, and I didn't realize in that moment what I was opening up in his world just by mentioning investing.
Right.
And investing into property or stocks or whatever. And so I just said it. I didn't tell him to go do it. I just said it, and I opened up his world. And he spent the next 2 weeks like looking at the biggest stocks and companies and corporations, and and I realized in that moment yesterday that I didn't do my job.
Right.
Like, I opened up this door, but I didn't walk him in, and I didn't take the time to walk him in and show him the steps, show him like, okay, where do you even invest?
Right.
And how, and what does that look like?
Right.
And so, yeah, I definitely understand where you're coming from, and so before you get into what you walking them through looks like, I want to look at the camera and I want to say I met this young man here in Charlotte, North Carolina, about a week ago, and we were with Equal Justice Now, of course, and we were doing an interview with the sheriff. Sheriff McFadden. Shouts out to Sheriff McFadden.
Sheriff, love,
he's
man.
actually
Love.
who connected the two of us, and he wanted to take us as an organization on a tour of his jail. And we're taking a tour, and I've seen this before, seen it in real life as a young kid, seen it on TV. But then he introduced me to something that I'd never seen before. And he walks us into this classroom, very small classroom, and there's about what, eight inmates in there, and
Returning citizens.
Detention center.
Returning to detention center residents.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Sheriff. I'm sorry, my brother. And so we walk in this room, and when we walk in this room, all of them say, "Hey, what's up?" And they pull pieces of paper off the desk, and they're raising up in the sky their logos for their new businesses. And I'm seeing trucking logos, and I'm seeing rental car logos. I'm seeing all different types of logos for these companies that these guys have just got certification for, just started their LLC for, and I'm like, whoa. And so I start dropping tears. And I start thinking about my family members who are incarcerated. And, they don't have this opportunity in front of them. They don't have, this possibility mentally in front of them as they're about to, be done with their time spent. And so, can you walk us through what you had going on in there, because he was at the head of the classroom? What did you have going, to tell the people what you had going on in there, and what this program is about?
Right. So my nonprofit is Peace for Poverty.
Okay.
And I came up with Peace for Poverty because during incarceration, I knew that there was peace for those that were in poverty. And when I look at poverty, poverty is just a lack of. And most of the time, I was speaking more from the position of the lack of emotional, mental, spiritual conditioning. So that places us in poverty internally way before we externally experience it. So that's where Peace for Poverty came from. And then I developed a program, the Next Great 50. The Next Great 50 is named after 50, with Charlotte being 50th in economic mobility.
Wow.
Number 2 in banking, but 50th in economic mobility, which is worse than some of the most dangerous cities in the United States. So you're trying to figure out, how does that happen, right? How does money not continuing to add to the changing and the living position of those who come from the Black and brown communities, right?
Right.
So during this time, I just started putting together the things that are going to be needed. And those things are establishing your business and proper business structure, mental health, character building, your logos and representation, and website development. So all of those who are incarcerated, they have the opportunity, and out of the 2 cohorts that we had recently, we've graduated 22 returning citizens who, before they are released, have their own business. Before they are released, they have their business structured. Before they are released, they already have their credit repaired. Before they are released, they have their websites. All of this, Sheriff McFadden has allowed and said, you know what, this is what is going to change. And you can look throughout the country. You can look, with the exception of overseas.
Right.
Overseas is very privy to this type of structure. So it's not new to them.
Right.
But here, on the level in which that God has blessed us to be at, there's not programs out there. There isn't a program out there that actually is repairing men's credit before they come home, already have a business established before they come home, already have website. But not only that, but the same program that I have for returning citizens, I have for the community as well as youth, right? So in this world, they like to call it financial literacy, right? And you have so many different components of financial literacy. But you also have the component of those who come from where we come from, that the information alone is not just enough. Just telling them, hey, this is how you get this and this is how you do this is not enough. So what me and my program and those who work within my program, my team, what we do is we have specialists in credit, mental health, character building, strategic planning, website development, and proper structure. We actually walk them through that through a 16-week course. So 1 month we deal with credit, 1 whole month we deal with mental health, 1 whole month we deal with business structure. So by the time the 16 weeks is over, you have successful increased credit scores of business owners. Wow. So instead of people just coming to a summit to hear information without application, we actually have information meets application right then and there. And we have the people that are taking the time to hold their hand through this, because we got a lot of people that didn't come up in business. Everybody didn't come up with understanding how to put this with this and match that with that. They need a certain type of relationship. So thus far, we've created over 100 businesses. We do alumni calls, and we see the increase of each business. And right now, we're starting our first structured business from the individuals who have graduated the program. They've come back, and we've done partnerships that help the businesses grow within the next grade 50. And we've done the same thing with the youth. So instead of, I knew that when men were released, they had to have something to come through, because some of these men ain't gonna get out for 5 years. Right. Some of these men ain't gonna get out for 7 years or 8 years, but the history of their business is gonna generate them some money, right? Just the history alone. So on top of their credit. So when they come home, now they have a community of people who have already been successful and continuing to go through the program to embrace them with open arms. So now it's like, okay, you starting a trucking company. We got 8 people who started trucking companies. Get with them, and we're going to go ahead and get you started.
That's right.
Cleaning services. We've got about 10 cleaning businesses that have been cleaning. Go ahead and get with them. We're creating an environment that is not built and predicated on information alone. It's predicating on the results. So we have 68 to 70% leaving the program with 100 to 150 plus credit scores, right? Majority of everybody coming through have a 100-point increase in the mental health that actually seek counseling and therapy afterwards, which is unheard of in our community.
It is.
But we create a trust. We create a deeper understanding and relatability to the people. We're not so far-fetched removed from the people. So I think that right there has ensured the success of what we're doing inside detention centers.
Yeah, that's I mean, you obviously have a nice list of things you've accomplished, and would you say that's the most impactful thus far?
Man, that's my purpose.
Yeah.
That's my purpose. You know, everything else is good, but that's my purpose.
And you mentioned the words, the word graduation. Mm-hmm. You actually have a graduation coming up right around the corner here, right? This Friday?
Yeah, we have a graduation on Friday, and then the launch of our 4th cohort for the community on Saturday. So yeah, the men will be graduating with their businesses, logos, websites, mental health connection, structure, and Microsoft is one of my partners. So with Microsoft being my partners, we use the Teams platform to upload all of their information. So regardless of when they get out, we got their EIN numbers, we got everything that they need. So we have kind of like a packet for them upon release to let them know, hey, yo, here you go. You've already been working on your credit. Now get with my team over here who's actually in your field to help push that needle along. Look, don't make this mistake, don't make this mistake, don't make this mistake. So it's sure proofing. It's sure proofing to make sure that recidivism and reform is actually seen in action, and not just something that we continue to ask for in certain political situations. Of course, we do need those people who push that paper. We need those people who put that press in the political realms, but we also need those people who are actually putting foot to work and actually doing the work that actually brings the transformation for what reform truly is.
Yeah, I mean, it don't get no bigger reforming than that, you know. And so, if there's one thing, there's one thing that you can tell the people, even the young people out there, and leave them with a message, in regards to attacking life and doing the right thing, what would it be?
Understanding the importance of time. I think understanding the importance of time is key. I like to break down time as, truth. Truth meaning being true to yourself, being true to knowing who you are, being true to your current situations, both good and bad. Truthful to the positions where you're at mentally and emotionally and spiritually and financially and physically. Truthful, not something that's being mimicked according to what you see. And the I is intimacy, becoming intimate with those things that you become truthful about. That's a certain type of level of execution that comes with having intimacy with truth. You know what I'm saying? And management, making sure that you manage everything properly, your friendships properly, your position in life properly, everything. And then the elevation, because with proper management, you'll be able to elevate to whatever level that you really need to. So really, that's how I look at time. And I think time is one of the most important things growing up and any time. And as long as you put a meaning to your time, then you'll go far.
Would you throw patience in there too?
Patience, definitely. I think patience is a part of it.
In regards to that time?
Time is overall a patient thing. It definitely is. Time is a patient thing. I had to be patient overall. And but yeah, patience would definitely be involved in that. And time, man, it's more valuable than what people think.
You know, because you're so dope and you got so much going on. You had mentioned something before we even sat down today. You said you're working on a documentary.
Yeah.
And we didn't even speak on that.
Yeah.
And so when can people expect your documentary, and where can they find it?
Documentary, man, we're in the closing of it. I'm gonna say 2024, man.
Okay.
I'm gonna go ahead and say we're gonna wrap this thing up this year. We've been shooting for 2 years. And we're gonna wrap this thing up, man. We're gonna get it done. A lot of everything in which that I do, it come out of my own pocket. So
What's the title gonna be?
Broken Boy.
Broken Boy.
Thus far.
Things
you might
change.
have a title right now, and then you get to production and that baby gone. Like
Yeah.
that baby gone. They done got so much footage and so much coverage. They're like, nah, I think this might be it.
Sure.
At this point, just trying to figure out what that is, and really excited about that.
Okay. Well, listen, this was another episode of the Equal Justice Now podcast, 2023. Thomas Lucas, my man Joshua, and I'm just so ecstatic to be sitting next to this guy and getting a whiff of what he's been through. And I hope, it was the same for you all. I hope you learned something. And Joshua, man, thank you.
And you already know, man.
Thank you, and keep doing what you do.
For sure.
For sure.
Whether people realize it or not, every man that is in prison is a broken boy. So many times people just see the computer screen and see the charge. Nobody's taking the time to listen to them. Being able to connect with men in there and understanding the need, it only encouraged me even more that when I came home to know exactly how to meet people where they're at and to grow from there. The whole point of this program right here is to make sure y'all credit get right before y'all get out, to make sure y'all business is established before you get out, make sure your websites is up and popping before you get out. This is work. If y'all put in the work in which that we put in to get to you, I promise you it's gonna work. I know how it feels. The emotions that you feel, I know how it feels. Because whether you got 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 7 years remaining, what's being done right now is gonna help you no matter what.